What's up, everybody? If you want to join the greatest online Star Wars community, the Fandom Menace, make sure you hit that subscribe button before today's video starts, so you don't miss out on any updates and you're always the first to know when our newest videos go live.
The following is a world-class Bullshitters exclusive.
In 2019, the franchise to beat at the box office is Marvel. With 22 films bringing in over $20 billion worldwide, it's safe to say that people like the MCU, and with Avengers Endgame snapping all box office records out of existence, you'd be silly to think that Marvel, or their parent company, Disney, would want to do anything to jeopardize all future success. You'd also be right, because that's exactly what they're doing. If the Brie Larson saga, now known as the Hindenburg, wasn't enough, if the sickening girl power moment in Endgame wasn't enough, if the constant barrage of stupid think pieces from websites like IO9, Screen Rant, and the Mary Sue weren't enough, well then, buddy, I'm afraid I've got some bad news. On the internet, there is a term for when something truly entertaining becomes useless, preachy, banal, one-sided, politically driven entertainment. It's called getting woke, and no one likes it. Take a moment and ask yourself this question. Why does television, most movies, and anything produced by Netflix, save for Stranger Things, suck these days? Why is the news garbage? Why are video games censored to appease a few people on the internet? One word sums it up nicely: agenda. Now it seems that this agenda has seeped its way into our beloved MCU. What was once fun and exciting looks to become just like Star Wars, run by people detached from reality with an army of sycophantic journalists who are just an extension of their advertising department, waging battle against the sole thing that keeps the money-printing franchises alive: the fans. It's been happening for years in the Star Wars universe, and it's beginning to rear its ugly head into the MCU, and now another franchise with decades of legacy is being sacrificed to the woke gods to appease a phantom audience. This franchise isn't about superheroes or a galaxy far, far away. It's about one man, and his name is
Bond. James Bond.
With 24 official films, 2 unofficial, and another currently in production, the James Bond franchise has something that Marvel, Star Wars, Planet of the Apes, Harry Potter, The Hunger Games, and Lord of the Rings don't: longevity. Since 1962, James Bond has remained the premier action-adventure icon in cinema. Guns, gadgets, women, and martinis all underscore an action-packed franchise that started the spy craze of the 1960s. There's a creeping force more widespread than Spectre, uglier than Jaws, and deadlier than Xenia Onatopp's thighs. Its name? Identity politics. The infusion of modern-day identity politics into entertainment is truly an ugly thing. As we've seen for the past few years with Star Wars, identity politics, destroys everything it touches. If Goldfinger is the man with the Midas touch, then identity politics are the kiss of death for James Bond. James Bond is the male fantasy brought to film. Men want to be James Bond and women want to be with James Bond. They're films that hit our primal desires: sex, love, greed, power, vanity. The character of James Bond is the realized version of this. He's what men like to believe they are. We all want to believe that in the face of danger, we'll be like James Bond. In reality, we won't be. But that's why movies exist: to sell us a beautiful lie for 2 hours. Let us escape into a fantasy, be it amazing or other. And now, much like everything that's good, they, the powers that be, are trying to ruin it with identity politics. Check out this piece of digital trash from the Financial Times. Decaf latte, frothed, not foamed, a James Bond for our times. The 007 franchise is looking seriously past its sell-by date. Can Phoebe Waller-Bridge give it a #MeToo makeover? Ugh. I must confess that I never really got James Bond, even before I understood that the movies were passé, predictable, and Paleolithic. I can see the films had a certain 1960s appeal, a throwback to a time when men were men and women were spray-painted gold and left to suffocate. Even in the 1970s, they were already long, shallow, and devoid of storyline. There were a few iconic bars with the soundtrack: Bond, James Bond, Shaken Not Stirred, and any number of other self-referential cliches. As a child, I somehow could never muster a sense of anticipation a new Bond film was supposed to engender. Even in an era when fine food, fast cars, and fast women were not widely available. Well, not to me anyway. I bet they're still not. It was not if my life was one long cavalcade of Bond-like sophistication. Fine dining was the Angus Steakhouse in Wembley Hill, where the wine waiters wore burgundy blazers and served a very palatable Toffel wine. A fast car was my mate's Capri, and as for fast women, well, perhaps I should have worn more denim aftershave. So, the sight of Daniel Craig posing with a bevy of Bond beauties to promote the latest movie would not have ordinarily set me aquiver with anticipation, but then I read this was going to be a Bond film for the #MeToo era. And now, quite frankly, I'm interested. Even so, you have to wonder what a Bond stripped of misogyny and casual violence brings to the party. The name's Bond, James Bond, and this is my assistant Susan, who will be accompanying me on all private conversations with the ladies, so you can be sure I won't try to force myself on you the way that we both know you want. Barman, I'd like this. You know what? This guy's attempted humor is piss poor. Ugh. Moving on. I'm sure Waller-Bridge can do something to him if she's allowed to do more than pep up the dialogue for female characters. Killing Eve's Villanelle was a masterpiece of homicidal humor. It must be possible to construct an all-action hero attractive to women who doesn't talk and stalk like an office perv at a Christmas party. Still, it's a challenge. The Fleabag writer may have to start off thinking that perhaps the bad guy can be a sleazy big shot who forces himself on beautiful women and discards them afterwards. And then she'll remember, oh, hang on, that's the good guy. On the other hand, a #MeToo Bond, a tongue-tied gent, more of a mold of say, Hugh Grant in 4 Weddings, might be closer to something men like me can work with. Who gives a fuck what men like you can work with, dude? You suck. It's a more attainable, more metrosexual form of masculinity. Now listen here, Blofeld, in the immortal words of David Cassidy. No, wait. That's not right. But there is a bigger problem. The entire notion of James Bond is cliched and archaic. And it's not just the obvious issues with such attitudes towards women, which, when you think about it, are not much better than the idea of icing prostitutes in Grand Theft Auto. Its vision of manly perfection no longer rings true. The Ian Fleming sense of sophistication is utterly outmoded. Bond's success was based on a part of the bumper budgets that delivered old-world glamour and over-engineered action. In their day, they were the biggest show in town, so Bond was the pinnacle of sophistication. Now we know that Macau casinos are the height of kitsch, not cool. No more the zenith of chic than the Burj Dubai is a World Heritage Site. As for Eton, have you looked at Parliament lately? Some of the more recent films tried harder. Skyfall is not bad if you can pass over the treatment of one particular female character. But Bond has gone from being a recognizable, and I guess aspirational stereotype, to being little more than a cartoon character in an era of Marvel comic books with which it cannot compete. For all the gadgetry, Bond is seriously analog. But perhaps Fleabag's Waller-Bridge, who notably wrapped up her show after just 2 series, can bring the Bond franchise one thing it really needs: a conclusion. You know, I used to think that Octopussy was the worst thing ever associated with James Bond. But this article takes the cake. This man represents the problem with all entertainment journalism. People like Robert Shermsley are many things, but the fact that he, 1, doesn't like James Bond films, and 2, is disconnected from reality makes him the type of person to avoid when looking for a discussion on 007. He's not a fan. He's a journalist looking for clicks. He thinks his progressive views on entertainment make him qualified to dictate it. A deeper look into this man shows that he's just a UK political commentator. And as we've learned, UK politics are a mess. Ask yourself, do you really want L337 from Solo, a Star Wars story, writing the next 007 film? What was the worst part of Solo? Her. You want more of that? That's how you get box office bombs. What makes this man, and others discussing James Bond dangerous, is their gross misunderstanding of the character. They admit to not liking Bond, yet have an opinion. These people have no creativity of their own. Their insane worldviews don't sell entertainment, but their stupidity kills it. We've seen that very rarely does handing the reins of a property to someone unqualified work out for the fans. Just to show you how little these websites know about James Bond, let's jump over to Screen Rant and see another masterpiece of shit from the mouth of Ben Sherlock, proving how dumb modern entertainment journalism is. James Bond, 10 actresses who could play a female 007. With Phoebe Waller-Bridge being brought in to punch up the script for the as-yet titled Bond 25, speculation has started once again that the next actor to play 007 could be female. There's a long-standing fan theory that all actors have played James Bond have been playing a different character with the same codename, which would explain how he's barely aged in half a century, and how he manages to have so many faces. If this is true, a female Bond could easily be explained within the story. Or maybe she doesn't have to be explained at all. Would it really be so crazy if we have another few standalone spy stories in the Bond franchise and the lead is a woman that's never been addressed? It doesn't get addressed when Bond changes from Pierce Brosnan to Daniel Craig, so why does this need an on-screen explanation? Here are 10 actresses who could play a female 007. Now, I'm not going to read you the top 10 list, but I have a question for you. Is it just me, or do you feel dumber after hearing this read aloud? It's like this guy has no clue what he's talking about when covering James Bond, or anything for that matter, because he doesn't. I've covered this multiple times on our podcast throughout the years, but let me lay it out right here. James Bond is not a code name. It never has been, and it never will be. There have been clear indicators that it's the same man from Sean Connery to Pierce Brosnan, and Daniel Craig is a reboot. But people like Ben and other self-proclaimed non-Bond fans who don't watch these movies because they're old keep spreading lies in an attempt to come off as qualified. You got me fired up right now. Let's take a quick detour and put this dude, and anyone out there who believes his stupidity, in check. I'm gonna need some background music. Sean Connery appears in the first 5 Bond films. In 1969, he is replaced by George Lazenby for the film On Her Majesty's Secret Service. That film shows James Bond with relics from his previous 5 missions, indicating that it's the same character. What's also important is that this is the James Bond film in which he marries. In 1971, Sean Connery returns to the role. In this film, 007 faces off against Ernst Stavro Blofeld, the same villain he's been after since 1967's You Only Live Twice, a Sean Connery film, and also appeared in On Her Majesty's Secret Service, aka the Lazenby film. In 1973, Roger Moore begins to play James Bond. He will be in the role until 1985. In 1981, his film For Your Eyes Only begins with Bond visiting the grave of his deceased wife, Teresa, the woman he married in On Her Majesty's Secret Service, the Lazenby one. This scene connects Connery, Lazenby, and Moore as the same James Bond. Roger Moore's successor, Timothy Dalton, started playing the character in 1987. In Dalton's second outing, License to Kill, it is briefly mentioned that he was once married. Again, this ties him back to the previous three actors. Finally, in 1995, Pierce Brosnan becomes James Bond. In his final film, Die Another Day from 2002, he visits Q Branch, which houses all of his past gadgets. He acknowledges these from the past missions, as does John Cleese's Q, which ties the first 5 actors playing James Bond together as the same man. Daniel Craig's films are a reboot, plain and simple. In the film Skyfall, they make it a point to return to his childhood home and show the headstones of his parents. Spoiler, they read Bond. It's like Batman. From 1989 through Batman and Robin, it's the same Batman played by different actors. When Bale took over in 2005, it's a whole new version of the character. Same with Batfleck, yet people only get confused when it comes to 007. A female 007 is like the countless other gender swap films from the past 10 years. Never as good as the original, and rarely, if ever, successful. The idea of changing the brand for no apparent reason is baffling. The last few Bond films have been a major success. Infusing identity politics that only appeals to people who don't watch your films alienates a portion of your audience who does. Updating James Bond is not inherently a bad thing. They've done it before in the past. He doesn't smoke. That was an intentional change. Smoking isn't considered cool by society. It's not chic. It's not sexy. You don't want Bond to be tatted up with gold teeth shouting YOLO any more than you want him tipping the fedora or hacking up a lung. Bond is meant to represent the indulges of man. Excess is the key. In today's climate, there is a call to neuter our desires. We're told to quell our primal urges to appease some arbitrary rules set forth by incredibly unlikable and, quite frankly, useless people. And for what? To pass a Bechdel test? To win brownie points with some misanthropic writer from the Mary Sue? Who cares what they think? They're not the customer base. The Avengers MCU parallel from earlier is fitting, and this article from Bloomberg shows that catering to your core audience rakes in the dough. Avengers Endgame $1.2 billion opening shows fanboys roll. Avengers Endgame broke all kinds of box office records over the weekend, powered mostly by male fans who did something uncharacteristic in the streaming era, lining up to see a premiere. The film took in $1.22 billion globally in its debut, collecting $357.1 million in the US and Canada alone, and blowing through the $258 million mark held by superhero teams' own gloved hands with last year's Infinity War. The crowds were 57% male, with the biggest cohort of 28% being ages 25 through 34. Essentially, the people who were there for the birth of the franchise in their teenage and early adult years. Families comprised just 18% of the audience, a figure that may rise after the initial crush of the testosterone crowd. Teenagers made up 11%. The run for Endgame could continue with repeat viewings, with almost 3 out of every 10 patrons planning to watch the movie again in the theater, according to a post-track survey. This may be the most significant moment in the modern history of the theater business, said John Fithian, Chief Executive Officer of the National Association of Theater Owners. What we're excited about is that this historic weekend is the kickoff for what's going to be a 9-month stellar run in the movie theater business. Historic run. 57% male. Breaking records. I guess that's what happens when you make a movie for people that want to see a movie. In business, you go where the money is. Identity politics equals bankruptcy. The Bond producers Michael G. Wilson and Barbara Broccoli thankfully have some common sense. In a recent article from Harper's Bazaar, Broccoli shot down a female James Bond, and it's not the first time. Barbara Broccoli on why there won't ever be a female 007. James Bond producer Barbara Broccoli has ruled out a female replacement for when Daniel Craig steps down as 007 and says it's unlikely that the role will ever be played by a woman. Speaking from the film's launch event in Jamaica, Broccoli told Good Morning Britain, "I always feel that Bond is a male character. That is just a fact." At the event this week, it was also announced that Fleabag's Phoebe Waller-Bridge will serve as co-writer on the Untitled project, and Broccoli confirmed it was Craig's suggestion to enlist the award-winning star. "It was Daniel's idea. We all leapt to it. We loved her," she explained. "She's made a great contribution to it." Oscar-winning Rami Malek will play the villain in Bond 25 and told the ITV show, "Ultimately, villains are so great in Ian Fleming's novels. You go back to that instinctually. You go back to those books and decipher what makes them worthy adversaries for Bond. I am still working on that, to be quite honest, but I have no doubt I'm going to give him a run for his money. Craig's next Bond film marks the 25th movie in the iconic film franchise and will be Craig's last. Now, normally these videos lament the stupid future we face. People like Kevin Feige and Kathleen Kennedy drown their franchises in modern identity politics and then blame the fans for the outcome. Thankfully, there's a bit of class and common sense from the James Bond camp. I'm not saying the new era of 007 is perfect, but I've had a lot more fun viewing the last 4 James Bond flicks than I had the last 4 Star Wars flicks. And when I think about Bond 25, I don't feel as emotionally gutted as when I think about the future of the MCU. It's funny, people always want to pick apart those who don't buy into the internet herd mentality. You're always told nothing will make you happy. You don't know what you want. But when it comes to 007, I know exactly what I want. I want a big, bold Bond outing with beautiful women, an interesting villain, stunning locales, action that's second to none, and a James Bond with balls. The legacy of 007 is far more important than flash-in-the-pan politics. Ideals come and go, much like bad fashion trends and hairstyles, but Bond transcends all of that because diamonds are forever. So what do you guys think about the whole hashtag #MeToo007? I think it's dumb. But when I read articles from the James Bond camp, I feel a little more safe because Barbara Broccoli just shuts it down instantly. She says no, she says never, she says always a male. I hope that also extends to keeping James Bond as the same character. And I'd like to think that the James Bond camp is just waiting for these stupid things to die down. The hype of a female Bond or a black Bond to die down. They just want to give it a rest. They want to wait for people to stop talking about it instead of saying something stupid publicly. And I dig that. I get it. People get high on an idea and then they just kind of forget about it after time goes by. And I think that's what the James Bond camp is doing. Now, as I said, not everything they do is perfect. But what I hate is the idea of identity politics dictating the future of a franchise because it sounds cool right now. Star Wars bought into that shit right from the beginning. You had some idiot like J.J. Abrams and some bigger idiot like Kathleen Kennedy support these ideas, and we have hollow, lifeless characters. Now, the MCU has been solid up until Captain Marvel, but Avengers Endgame really fixed that. And it wasn't because Captain Marvel made $1 billion why Endgame is the biggest movie of all time. It's because of the other 21 flicks prior to Captain Marvel, building a world, building an audience, becoming part of people's everyday lives, and being the modern day myth. Now, Bond doesn't have that. Bond may have more films, but less box office, but also has a much longer franchise legacy. But no matter how long the franchise gets in the tooth, the people behind it still seem to get it. I mean, listen to how Rami Malek discusses the Fleming villain. They know what people that like James Bond movies want to hear, and they tend to give it to us. My biggest complaints from the new James Bond movies haven't necessarily been his treatment of women. And by the way, that really shitty article I'm sure was discussing Bernice Marlowe's character, who was the Macau prostitute that was shot right in the beginning of the film. Well, not every character is created equally, so I don't know how that is an attack on women. It's just a character who exists for some purpose. There are plenty of guys that just get killed off in these movies too, for a story purpose, and that's fine. Let's stop analyzing everything under the sexist lens because it becomes a witch hunt, a Where's Waldo for misogyny, and that's not fun for anyone involved. It's not fun for the fans, it's not fun for the filmmakers, and the people that want to find this shit, they don't know what fun is. Like I said, they're a bunch of assholes who have no sense of humor. So let those people stick to their UK politics, let them stick to their desire to feel self-important, but most importantly, let them stay away from James Bond. Like I said, it really stems from not understanding the character. I hate the codename theory. There is no validity to it, and the franchise has gone out of its way to show you that it's just that, a stupid theory that holds no weight. I firmly believe that's why they showed James Bond's parents' headstones in Skyfall, to keep that dead. But that's it for today from me. I want to know what you guys think about all this. Let me know down in the comments below. I guess the question for today's video is, do you like the idea of a hashtag #MeTooJamesBond? I know most people are going to say no. And what are your thoughts on Bond 25? It could be awesome, it could be terrible like any other movie, but I'm erring on the side of I'm interested because I think James Bond needs a big comeback. 25 would be a nice number to close it out on, but James Bond could go forever with the right direction. And right now, well, I think it's got the right direction. So let's get Daniel Craig out of there, let's get a new creative team, and let's make something for the ages. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up and share it all over social media. If you're a super fan of this channel, join our Patreon page. $1 a month helps, but $5, which is only 17 cents a day, gets you access to all kinds of exclusive digital content, and it helps us grow the channel. Speaking of patrons, if you're a $5 patron and up, we're going to have a special for you later today. It's a discussion that's over 2 hours long, where Kendo and I sit down, rank the Bond films, discuss why we ranked them, how they are, and then we give you the official master list of the channel. It was a lot of fun, so if you're a diehard Bond enthusiast and you want a channel that is full of diehard Bond enthusiasts, well then, join us. Get involved with the fandom menace, have a lot of fun. We like Star Wars, we like Marvel, we like all of entertainment, and James Bond holds a very special place in our heart. So after you've done that, go over and join our Facebook page. It's a lot of fun. Get involved in the community, make some friends, have some discussions about entertainment. I will be back next time with more content, but in the meantime, go out into the world and be excellent to each other.